Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. It is a pleasure and an honor to be with each of you. Thank you for making the time for this gathering this evening. And so we've got Oregon, Portland, Maine. We've got Portland, Oregon, and Portland, Maine. I love it. Great way to start. Rochester, New York, Quebec, Virginia, North Carolina, Washington, Wisconsin, Nevada. Look at these coming in so fast. Illinois, New Jersey, Michigan, British Columbia, Western New York, Tennessee, Boston, Washington, D.C., British Columbia, Florida. We are having people join from all across the continent, and it is truly an honor and a privilege to be with you all this evening. As we know, we are responding to the reality of the ecological crisis that is in front of us. And this is an urgent and necessary time for us to be responding. The church has given us this beautiful opportunity of the season of creation, this period of time in our year from September 1st, which is the World Day of Prayer for Creation, or Creation Day, which extends until October 4th, the Feast of St. Francis, of this time for us as Catholics to really dive into looking at what's happening with creation and what is God calling us forward into. We've just lived through the summer where we traditionally have some of the greatest climate impacts hitting us across North America, right? We've had floods. Dr. Lothes is just joining us from, she recently just experienced one of those major floods. We've had massive heat waves. Some of you are still in the midst of heat waves. We've had hurricanes hitting. We've had all sorts of things hitting us from coast to coast and on the islands and the Caribbean from North America. And so perhaps we see this moment as more urgent than ever as we come this evening. And thank you. And so for our opening prayer, as we start, I invite you just to take a couple of deep moments. As we arrive this evening, we know that all sorts of things have been coming your way today, all sorts of to-do lists, all sorts of urgent actions, different things coming across social media or emails. And we invite you to take a moment to take a deep breath and place those concerns into God's loving hands for these next 75 minutes so that we can focus together on how we're best called to respond to this ecological crisis that is in front of us. So take a couple of deep breaths. God of deep planning and resonant improvisation, as we hear the story of your awe-inspiring work of the creation of all that exists, we hear a step-by-step account of how the world unfolded.
And while it may seem planned, perhaps it was a gift of improvisation and radical sacred imagination beyond what we may have originally thought possible. In the midst of a windy abyss of pure darkness, a place many would call hopeless, you created something completely new and called forth light, which was profoundly, deeply good. Inspire in us your creative imagination and abundant thinking, that we may do the same.
From what you could see in this light, you found another place to create, the sky. In the midst of what could be seen, your next step was to build a place for everything to exist upon. From this new reality, this new space, you dreamed land and seas into being, creating new beauty, an entirely new reality from what had been before.
Perhaps it was only then, after this phenomenal step by step of building something new, could you see the possibility, calling forth something which had never been seen before, life. Each step, each new piece of this creation was stunning. And could it be possible that each one could only unfold because of the one before it?
How could we dare to think that we could see the end from this moment in which we stand? From you we learn we must take a step in order to see our next one. You created all of the magnificence around us, but each step was built upon the stunning creation of the day before, which was previously inconceivable. And we invite you all to take a moment now. Have you ever come to a place on this earth which had beauty you never could have dreamed of until you laid your eyes upon it? Have you heard a song of creation so moving you didn't even know it could exist? Have you tasted a meal so delicious that it just blew your mind, or felt love beyond anything you could conceive? We invite you to spend a moment remembering that experience of coming to something that you couldn't previously imagine.
This moment, God, we pray for insight. Help us see that which is ours to do next. Then, from our place in this pilgrimage, inspire us with your inconceivable creativity, that we might imagine our next move, hoping and acting with the gospel of your divine creation. Amen.
Amen. Thank you all so much for entering into this moment of prayer with us. This moment that we find ourselves where the science is coming at us with increasing frequency, the realities are coming at us. We are seeing the impacts in just profound and unfortunate unfolding. And it can be hopeless. It can be that dark abyss from which God called forth all of creation, right? We find ourselves in the midst of a sense of hopelessness often. A study came out from the University of Bath a couple of years ago that showed that the majority of young people feel hopeless. Over 55% unfortunately believe that humanity is doomed. And yet we know that this is not the story of our faith, the story of what we are called into, right? We are facing a profound reality in this moment, the urgency of this crisis. And yet we are people who believe that God created all of this magnificence out of a barren wasteland. We are people who believe in a Christ who came back to life, right? We are an Easter people. And so in the midst of this really hard time, and not being naive to the challenges that are in front of us, but instead having this resurrection hope, this radical, deeply rooted hope, we are called to step forth within this reality. And so when Pope Francis calls us to differentiated responsibility, what he means is he's calling us to discern in the realities in which we find ourselves in this extreme, urgent, and real time. What is ours to do? What is our beacon to pick up and carry forward? And so we've so appreciated this opportunity to move through these 3 sessions with each of you as we reflect upon what are the real challenges we're facing? How can we come together? Because facing these challenges are so hard and so just grueling if we do it individually. But when we're together, we're given faith for the journey, right? Jesus sent us out in pairs. We're called to be in community. And so facing the challenges we face in the United States and Canada as we look at this division, how do we open into this based on research, based on the realities we're facing? And Dr. Catherine Hayhoe says, the most important thing we can do about the climate crisis is talk about it. And so this is our invitation to you. And it might feel like maybe you're saying to yourself right now, really, Anna, like really talk about it. We're facing carbon in imaginable amounts. We are blowing past all these scientific boundaries and we're blowing past all these realities. And yes, I know. And my heart is breaking for it too. And I feel the urgency of needing to respond from a science-based approach. While we also know that our power as people of faith and our ability as people of faith is to invite people beyond the partisan into a space of saying, God created all of this and we are here to protect it. This is our call. This is our call to move forward into this. And so just to reflect on where we've been these past 2 weeks as we've been addressing this. On our first call, we had a powerful conversation with David Key as we explored, as we hope and build to grow this culture of caring for our common home and our parishes, our universities, our ministries, and our communities. How do we do so in an intentional and impactful way? How are we building our ministry, work, and power in such a way that people and decision makers can more easily say yes to our requests and our ideas of how to make our communities more ecologically aware and integrated? How are we building this network of trust and community building that go beyond the divides that our culture is trying to sell to us? And last Monday, we talked about managing resistance. When we get pushback from these decision makers and people standing in our way, what do? Dr. D'Andelio so quickly and proficiently took us through church teaching and ecclesiology on caring for our common home. And then I walked through the story of Zacchaeus and other gospel examples of how Jesus dealt with resistance. And we reflected together, how can we gather strength and insight from the richness of our faith tradition? And so as we move forward, now I'm excited to move us into this next session where we reflect on how we're called to communicate climate as Catholics. Why does it matter that we are Catholic as we engage in this work of responding to the urgent ecological crisis? Why does it matter? And quite honestly, how can we have bread for the journey that can sustain us in this urgent and sacred work of healing our common home? How do we keep ourselves going as Catholics? What is the call of our Catholic faith, and what is the sustenance of our Catholic faith as we move forward into it? And so I am very excited to introduce Dr. Erin Lothes, a wonderful collaborator, colleague, and friend at the Laudato Si movement. She is a theologian who researches energy ethics and the faith-based environmental movement. She is senior manager of the Laudato Si Animators program with the Laudato Si movement. She's the author of Inspired Sustainability, Planting Seeds for Action, and The Paradox of Christian Sacrifice, The Loss of Self, the Gift of Self. She is lead author of Catholic Moral Traditions and Energy Ethics for the 21st Century in the Journal of Moral Theology, and author of many other energy ethics essays and articles based on faith-based environmentalism. Erin has participated in the activism of the interfaith environmental and divestment movement since 2003. She holds a PhD in systematic theology from Fordham and a master's degree in theology from Boston College and an AB in English from Princeton. She served as Earth Institute Fellow at Columbia, researching environmental advocacy at diverse American congregations. So if there's anyone who's going to talk to us about how we communicate climate as Catholics, we could not be more blessed than to have Dr. Erin Lothes with us this evening. Along with all of these amazing esteemed things, I am excited also to have you join us for her warm and welcoming wit, her deep heart that is so invested in all of this, and the way in which she brings all of who she is forward into this. So Erin, it's a true honor to have you with us this evening. Thank you so much, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Anna, for that very, very warm welcome. And I am just delighted and thrilled to be with you all tonight. The goal of all that we do together is to advance our shared mission as Catholics, caring for our common home. We learn from each other, we support each other, we strengthen each other, and we each have so many diverse and unique gifts. So it's a real privilege and pleasure for me to be here with you tonight and to share some reflections. And I would very much value all of your comments and reflections afterwards. My great thanks to Anna, to Luke, and to Maria, your North American team, for the incredible planning that has gone into this webinar series. What a wealth of guidance, knowledge, wisdom, scholarship that we've shared over these evenings together. Tremendous thanks to David Key, to Dan DeLeo, and to Anna, and to Luke and Maria for all they've shared. So we really have taken wonderful steps together. And I'm thrilled to be reflecting with you about communicating as Catholics about creation. Those three C's have so much to offer. As Catholics, what is important about our faith, our values, our traditions in this shared mission of working for climate justice? And how do we root ourselves in not only creation's beauty, but in the doctrines of creation, in the spirituality of creation to inspire us? And then how do we communicate this to bring others along? It's all so, so important. So I'd like to begin by stepping into a metaphor of communicating through a very powerful means, which is that of music. We all know that when you sing, you pray twice, that music has charms to soothe the savage beast, that music lifts our hearts like nothing else can, and every good justice movement is powered by the songs that it sings. And today I want to reflect upon jazz. So Sandra Steingraber, an environmental activist, has written, "We are all members of a great human orchestra, and it is now time to play the Save the World Symphony. You don't have to play a solo, but you have to know the instrument you hold and find your place in the score." But what is the score? Wouldn't that be easy if we all knew the score? And what's my instrument? How do I use it? And most importantly, for the goals that we have now, how do I bring out the music in the other person with whom I am beginning a dialogue? So I would like to share a short clip with you of Miles Davis playing his melody, "It's About That Time." And in this very short clip, we are going to imagine that Miles is the dialogue partner we wish to engage. And we are the drummer. So listen here and see what instruments you can identify. And I really like the fact that this tune is called "It's About That Time," because we know the time that we are in. We are in a time of climate emergency, of a biodiversity crisis, of mounting humanitarian crises, and geopolitical stress from multiple climate impacts. This can raise all of our heartbeats, our stress, and our tension. But let's pause, still our heartbeats, and just listen. Listen to Miles, listen to the drummer. And let me make sure I'm sharing the music, because sometimes that doesn't happen. Okay. What if all of us, the dialogue partners, were repeating that drum beat? What if we made it louder and louder? Have you ever felt you were part of a climate change message drumbeat? The crisis, the crisis, the crisis, the disaster, the doom, the gloom. We have a disaster on our hands. And this message, this drumbeat, can drown out the trumpeter, the bassist, the keyboardist. If this is our drumbeat, we know all of you have probably listened to Katharine Hayhoe, one of the experts on climate change communication. We know that doom and gloom turns people off. They stick their heads in the sand. It's overwhelming. So what we need to do is listen to bring out the contribution of our dialogue partner, that other musician in the jazz symphony, the Save the World Symphony that we're trying to build. And so I would love to reflect on the next jazz artist that Sandra cites, a friend of hers, who says, this isn't a symphony we have to play. This is all-out improvisational jazz with its risk and surprise and its power to shake the air. No score, no practice sessions, no going back to try it again. Everything depends upon our skill in real-time composing. We are going to have to make it up as we go along. If we are going to save the world, it will be with the greatest exercise of improvisational imagination the planet has ever seen. The great jazz trumpeter Wynton Marsalis said it. It's the creative process incarnate. If you can't improvise, you are going to be in a heap of trouble. Creative process incarnate. Wow. What phrase could more beautifully capture our work and our ministry as Catholics caring for creation? In addition to Sandra, the great eco-theologian Elizabeth Johnson has also written about God's creative process with the analogy of a jazz musician, that God created the world in freedom, set it free to develop as it might, according to the laws of evolution, of chance, risking all the unexpected pathways of the world's development, but responding to it, nurturing it, present in providence as this musical encounter, this interplay between the beloved created world and God's presence unfolds in the jazz artistry of creation. So I would like to engage these ideas of Catholics communicating with and for creation, but I'm going to start with Catholic. Why does it matter that we as Catholics are doing this work? And I feel this is very important to ourselves as Laudato Si movement, as a place where ecological hope, environmental work, and Catholic faith unite. And we're so often told by people, I have never been able to bring together my environmental concerns and my faith. I didn't know they could go together. I so love that at LSM, I see these together. And so what we need to honor is the fact that we have this encouragement together, and know that it is with deepened faith and connecting that faith to our environmental concerns that our ministry can blossom, and we are truly in a place of integration and harmony with all the core loves of our life. Pope Francis has said, we have only one heart. We love the earth and we love from our faith as we've been shaped. So I invite you to reflect upon what are the values, the beliefs, the experiences, the traditions, the rituals. What are the ways in which you experience being Catholic that connects to your environmental mission? And I would like to share with you a worksheet that you can go through. But that first question is, what is it about your faith most strongly resonates with your environmental concerns? So I invite you to think about that for a moment. So we all have our personal core values and experiences as Catholics. What might we share? I would say, first of all, caring for creation is neither optional nor secondary. So as Catholics, we bring that to the faith-based environmental movement. We bring that to the secular environmental movement, and we bring that to the world as a whole. Our faith conviction that caring for our common home is neither optional nor secondary to our Christian vocation. We know that we are embedded in 3 relationships: God, creation, and our neighbor, and we love our neighbor as ourselves. Hence, in honoring this interrelation, this integral ecology, we care for all. We live in the Eucharistic mystery of presence and transformation, and our Eucharist, our Thanksgiving, is a thanksgiving for our trust in resurrection faith, faith that new life is always possible, including the new life of ecological conversion, new life in the mind and heart. So that's what's so significant about being a Catholic in this work of communicating about creation. Let's take it back a step doctrinally to creation. We know that self-giving is creative and is rooted in the deepest mystery of Trinitarian creation, the teaching of kenosis, which is the giving up of divine glory by the eternal Son of God to become incarnate and present for us. But it is also the self-emptying of God, the triune creator, in the very process of creating space for creation. We too are the image of that creating God. We are the image of God. We are the image of a creating God. We are the image of a self-giving God, of a kenotic God. And our work as creation care ministers calls for that self-giving from us. It calls for challenging work. It calls for sacrificial work. It is not easy. And unlike God, we are finite. We are limited. We suffer the difficulty, the frustration, even the anger of being at this work year after year. Why didn't we resolve this in the 80s when Jim Hansen testified to Congress? Why are we still doing this work? That drumbeat seems extremely necessary. How do we find comfort and renewal from our ever-present God? We know that through the incarnation, through being with us in creation, God is with us to comfort us, to accompany us. And so our pain, our frustration, our exhausting journey is met by the presence of God. Still, we know it is not easy to continue this struggle. And in addition to the fact that we may have been in this struggle for a long time, we may find particular roadblocks, particular stumbling blocks that make it hard for us to build bridges with certain others or to engage in certain conversations. So I invite you to think about this. What perhaps has been your experience of challenge in conversation, in communications? Are there issues that, say, really set you off, make it really hard for you to dialogue, make it really hard for you to have patience? So knowing that it is not easy to continue in the journey and in the struggle, we know that the love of God is poured out in our hearts. And we have the encouragement of the church, the ecclesia, the people gathered here today. And the companionship of each of us is so important to every other one, because faith is the only countercultural source for showing that less can be more, that the throwaway culture is hollow and empty, that the prayer of St. Francis is true. It is in giving that I receive, and that in faith we can envision a beautiful, new, flourishing, green, inclusive, and just future. I love this line from Laudato Si 114, in which Pope Francis brilliantly combines recovery of traditional values with a bold cultural revolution. A bold cultural revolution comes about by recovering our values. It's so true and so brilliant. So we model Christ's persistence in his discipleship, in his ministry and mission, calling out injustice, remaining dedicated to those he wishes to serve, the marginalized, the poor, those who are suffering, those crucified on the cross of ecocide. And in following that path, our own self-emptying can open up others and lead to a universal communion. And this is not just an individual path. We need a societal restraint, a social kenosis. And this is a beautiful phrase that comes from Anna's insights. How do we have social kenosis, change in our society, reversal of the structures of injustice? Tearing down the energy systems that are polluting, that are death dealing, reversing the economic systems that crush the poor because of the globalization of indifference. The witness of our faith empowers us to do this. Yet we have to do it together. And so we are working to build bridges and communicate and strengthen this message across the whole church. We are working to engage others in our jazz moment here and listen to the contribution of the person we've chosen as our dialogue partner in our community, so that together we can sing a bigger song. Now, the jazz artist cited said, there's no score, no practice session, no going back to try it again. Well, that's not quite true. We can practice. We are doing it right now. And we are developing somewhat of a score, a little bit of a sense of guidelines. And these webinars that you've participated in before have laid down some amazing steps, some stepping stones, a solid rock that you can rest on. So we've thought about being Catholic and how those values strengthen and nourish us and inspire us, and how our faith in the deepest mystery of creation, which is self-giving at its core, is the fountainhead of the work that we do. So let's think about communicating. And I echo David's beautiful and empowering message. Rest in your power. Your ability to influence is as simple as the ability to extend an invitation and to develop a personal relationship. It is the ability, as Anna unpacked the scriptures for us so beautifully, to reach out to Zacchaeus and invite him to conversation. So where can you grow your power and your ability to influence? Through the ability to extend an invitation and develop a personal relationship. So I invite you to pause and think about that a little bit. We are here to be the voice of the voiceless. In this case, creation. Yet paradoxically, creation indeed has a voice, right? And we all hear its song every day. There is a stunningly beautiful catechism by St. John Paul II, in which he says, to contemplate creation is also to hear a message, to listen to a paradoxical and silent voice, as the Psalm of the Sun suggests. The heavens are telling the glory of God, and the firmament proclaims his handiwork. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night declares knowledge. There is no speech, nor are there words, yet their voice goes out through all the earth. So creation, we know, is singing and always has been, and yet is also crying out. So, knowing that you stand on the solid rock of Catholic social teaching, that this care for creation is essential to our faith, and that science is united in its consensus, feel empowered to tell your story. Where do you hear the song and the cry of the earth? And I invite you to reflect on that as well. What are the most inspirational and moving statements of Catholic social teaching that you may have heard from Dr. D'Andolio? What one or two facts of science are most compelling, perhaps especially in your region, to the people near you who share that experience? And then the perspective that is incontrovertible, your own experience. What about creation's song moves you the most? And what about its cry? Where do you hear its cry? And then in your conversations with others, your witness cannot be denied, right? That which you love about the earth is your love, and that which is breaking your heart is a reality. Now it's time for the kenosis of listening. We have to listen with patience. We have to recognize that our dialogue partner has his or her own perspective, even if it's one very different from your own. And within that is a perspective that must be heard and acknowledged for the conversation to go forward. No one can proceed in a dialogue if the feeling is, come over to my side. They have a perspective that must be honored and heard. So we can't be the insistent drummer. We have to listen and find out, is this person a saxophonist, a percussionist? Do they play the trombone? And what is their song? And what do they contribute? Is it a song in a minor key? Is it a dissonant song, but something that has a contribution to this artistic melody? So the musician has shared some virtues for the jazz musician: listening, responding, encouraging. We have to encourage each other, and we have to encourage our dialogue partner. And we have to have the courage to express ourselves, to advocate for the earth, and to take those steps back that a kenotic faith asks us to, and then to persevere in this path with humility and with faith. This is a purposeful journey. We know that the harvest is plenty and laborers are few, and you have been called by name. for this work. And I truly, truly believe that one of the greatest gifts we offer in being evangelists of the gospel of creation is to offer people hope, sustenance, to give them the space to own concerns for our earth that maybe they have never been able to consciously articulate. But if gently placed in the context of our faith and our care for each other, perhaps they can own this and take courage and follow in the solutions that we have and the beautiful ways of life we can initiate in a new ecological civilization. And so this is a gift that we have that we can share. And with all of our performing together, we truly will do as Pope Francis says and sing as we go. Thank you so much.
My goodness, Erin, thank you so much. What a phenomenal, heart-filled, inspired reflection that you just led us through of thinking about the strength and power of our Catholic faith in the midst of this improvisational jazz experience. So as we've done on the previous webinars and as we do in Laudato Si movement, we invite you to do the ASL way of applause, which looks like this. So please, everyone, a big round of applause. We have, in this series so far, reflected on each of our own charisms and what we bring, what we each individually bring with our God-given gifts, right? We know that we are part of the body of Christ, and we each have to play our role fully, right? Even if I am the pinky toe still plays an important role. Or whatever part of the body we are, we're each called to play an important role in responding to this crisis. So what's the instrument, what's the instrument that you excel at? How do you know it? And how are we move forward in that? Then we prayed with our ecclesial teachings and the story of Zacchaeus. And we reflected last week that the homework, if you will, was to think about who are the townspeople of your community, who could make people pay attention. As we reflected with Zacchaeus, we were aware and we talked about how the only reason that Zacchaeus came out to see Jesus, aside from, his divine realities, but the reason accessible to us is that Jesus brought out the crowds to the street, right? There were crowds upon crowds of people in the street, so much so that Zacchaeus had to climb a tree in order to see Jesus. So who are the townspeople we're reaching out to? And so this call to action is not asking you to say, go directly to your deepest opposition, right? Like I saw in the chat, and I'm well aware, like there are people that we know are deeply opposed to the work that we are doing. And yet there are also people who are more adjacent to what we're doing, right? Within the parish. So take a moment and don't think about those who come up to you and immediately express opposition, but rather, who are those adjacent? One of our key leaders in Texas, Linda, did an amazing job of reaching out to other committees at her parish in Texas and reaching out to the moms committee and the men's committee, right? And so this is our call at this point. Who is another committee who could understand with us, right? A key one to reach out to perhaps is your youth ministry or your young adult ministry. Who are young people are deeply concerned about this. All of the studies are showing that this is a deep concern. They might not understand that our faith has something to offer, but that they will come alongside of us if we say, we are called to respond through our faith. There is some amazing teaching and richness, both in our gospels and in our faith tradition. And let's walk forward together, take each step by step together as we move. So who is that adjacent community? Who's that townspeople that you would invite forward? And then today we've reflected on our gifts in faith, our role in the improvisation. And so now our invitation to you during the season of creation is to reach out to this other committee or commission or group in your parish. And this refers back to the parish, as David said a couple weeks ago. This could be your parish church, or if that doesn't fit with your current reality, maybe it's your university or your local reality parish, as they have in Louisiana, right? That you live within a parish. So reach out to your parish and invite them to a conversation about why the ecological crisis matters. Okay. I understand if you're taking a minute now and you're like, that's sweet, Anna. I've really enjoyed all this information, but I'm never going to do that. Please stop, take a minute, and consider what would it be to really do this in your parish? What would it be to really invite another into conversation, another committee into conversation about this, rooted in the data of what we can do that's most impactful, of reaching out across this space? And I know it's hard. So I'm going to take a moment and share with you a bit of my own experience. I have a 2-year-old daughter, and for me, so much of this work is rooted in her. And as this is us on a hike recently, and this I think encapsulates so amazingly for me why I do this work, right? I am so in love with the creation that surrounds me in Washington State, and I am so in love with my daughter, and thinking about how the work that I am doing is building a future for her. It's building a future and a livable planet for me, of course, but sometimes it's easier to do it for somebody that I love than it is for myself, right? We're taught that as Catholics, you know, don't put ourselves first, put others first. And the way that I am, when we talked in the prayer this morning about experiencing a love that was previously inconceivable, this was this for me, right? I love my daughter fiercely. And so what I thought I couldn't do before, what I was too scared to do before, what I was nervous, the conversations I was nervous about approaching, the realities I was nervous about facing. When I look into her face, I know I can do it. And so I invite you to take a moment now and think, who is that person? What is that sacred place in creation that for you is worth it? Is worth it to take that courageous step? Because it's hard and it's going to be hard. And I know, and it's scary. And I know that. And it's exhausting. And yet the world is on the line, right? Our God's creation is on the line. And so this is our time to step forward into this moment. And so take a moment now and think about who is that person, or what is that place? What is that thing that gives you the strength to go a step further than you thought you could? This is our call of our faith to step forward into this moment. And so look at the magnificence that is surrounding us and is giving us the deep depth and strength to move forward into this. Baba Doom said, in the end, we will conserve only what we love. We will love only what we understand, and we will understand only what we are taught. And I think the first part we can take, right? We will conserve what we love. When we love something so deeply, we are willing to take that extra step. We are willing to go a step beyond into that strengthened place of where we're called to be and what we're called to do, and take that step beyond what we think we can. That step that makes us a little bit uncomfortable, right? And that's the call of our faith. Following Jesus was never comfortable, and I don't think that was his plan, right? Following Jesus is a call to step into the uncomfortable for the well-being of all, and rooted in our own hearts and our own spaces. And so because we just love giving you worksheets, we have another one for you. And it reflects on these questions. These are amazing. Please keep sending these. I Brook in the Woods and my grandchildren, our children and grandchildren, all young people. These are incredible. Please keep putting them in the chat. So this call, this season of creation call, what we're inviting you to do is to really think about this. What other committee or commission or group at your parish will you invite into a conversation about this? And let's make a plan together. And does it strengthen us to know that we are doing it with other people, right? To know that I'm not the only one taking this courageous step during the season of creation, but that I am doing it with others as well. And so hopefully you've had a chance to think about who are these, what is this group of townspeople that you're going to have help you generate buzz and get the attention of your Zacchaeus? Who will you invite to a meeting? What keeps these community members up at night? How does building a culture of caring for our common home and our community help address this issue? When is this group meeting next? Who's going to send the invitation? Who will join you in this meeting? Who do you need to meet with before this meeting? What do you hope to accomplish? And what are your follow-up steps? Because we know this can be hard as well, we thought, let's create a potential sample of how you can do this. And so now in your chat box as well, we're sending you lots of links, and these will come to you in the follow-up email that you'll get on Wednesday also, just so you know. We're sending you potential ways to do this. So there's a potential invitation. There's a potential sample agenda, both the public sharing agenda as well as the private agenda that you can hold as you think about how you'll move through this. Take it and adapt it. This is meant to be wrestled with and opened up. So if the language doesn't work for your community, change it. By all means, the liberty is yours. Go for it and move forward into it. So this is your invitation. So I'm going to give us a few minutes now to sit with these questions that are on our screen and in that first worksheet to think about how you're going to make this happen. How are you going to do this during the season of creation? So we'll spend about 5 minutes in reflection with this, and then we'll move into our closing stuff. And you all, this work is hard, like we've been talking about, and it can get lonely at times. And this list is so inspiring. It's really, really profound and beautiful, and it is the work that we are called to do in the midst of this time of deep division in North America, right? That's just pervading our day-to-day life, our conversations, our politics, our realities that are in front of us. How are we responding above? How are we taking a step above and responding with our gospel call to resurrection hope? And each of us here are doing it. And it gives me more power knowing that I'm doing it with each of you. So thank you. And as we step into it, we are improvising with our jazz instruments, right? Our instruments of figuring out, when someone tells us why the ecological crisis matters or not to them, we got to figure out with God's Spirit and the Spirit infusing our words of how we respond to that and how we build connection around that. And so it is great to be playing in this jazz symphony with all of you. As we continue to build this, we also created some resources to share with you all so that you can see if I can just get access to it here so that you can share this with your parishes and your parish communities as well. And you'll see here we go, copy the link. There are a whole host of resources here. We have some prayers of the faithful that we invite you to share with your liturgy committees in both English and Spanish. And they are scheduled out for each Sunday during the season of creation, responsive to the readings of that week. We have a shared prayer for the season of creation in both English and Spanish. There are these global season of creation resources, including a Catholic liturgical guide, social media resources, poster for events that you can take and adapt. There are amazing resources from our partner, the Catholic Climate Covenant, including a Feast of St. Francis program. Homily helps should you be a priest or be able to talk to your priest or deacon around thinking about infusing the season of creation preaching with caring for our common home. Creation Mass templates, a season of creation banner, as well as a phenomenal landing page website that collates a ton of resources. So if you're looking for a resource on the season of creation, it probably exists and lives on that website. This is that global season of creation resource page. So if you go to that, feel free to take any and everything off of here. It is a ecumenical interfaith experience and celebration. And so you can see all sorts of different resources from other ones, but there also is a specific Catholic page. And so these resources can be helpful for you as you move through this and think about how to invite further conversation throughout your parish so that we are really building a culture that is responding to the urgency of this crisis with the sacred responsibility that we are called to, right? As we step forward into making decisions, how are we thinking about it with an ecological mindset? How are we making decisions saying, how will what we decide here impact the earth and impact creation? As we move forward, whether that be parish building decisions or communications decisions, what we do with our time, how we are approaching our leaders, right? And so thinking about that, as we build these communities that care for our common home, we will create this movement and we will fill the streets with people so that the Zacchaeuses start coming out and saying, what's going on here? And we can start inviting them into conversion. And now I would be remiss if not to say that our partner, which I was mentioning before, the Catholic Climate Covenant, is putting on a phenomenal webinar next week. So that is about voting for our common home for those of you in the United States. In Canada, I'm sure that there will be great insights you can take as well for next year, what you're moving through. So feel free to join as well. And it will be Bishop Joseph Tyson of Yakima and Dr. Dandeliu again will be presenting to talk about understanding and engaging the fullness of church teaching for conscientious values-based voting discernment. So you can register via the QR code, or that registration link will also go in the follow-up email. I just, again, want to say thank you. This is the challenge of our day. And this is the deepest challenge that is facing us right now. And yet, the strength of our faith is a profound opportunity for us to respond, right? We have everything we need. We've got the ecclesial teaching. We've got the history and the catechism, as Dr. DeLeo led us through last week. We each have power, right? And we have to discern how to use that power and transform it into influence. We have the Pope behind us. We have our lived experiences behind us. The earth is helping us out too as we move through this, right? It's giving us power to move through this. And it is almost impossible to deny the reality that the ecological crisis is upon us at this time. And the data is showing that as well. And so just to say, we have everything we need. The challenges are hard. Yes, they are so hard. And we will, if we didn't have challenges, would we really be fighting, would we really be facing the deepest challenge of our time, right? Of course, they're going to throw challenges at us. And so let's go, right? Let's take these challenges face to face with the gospel love that we are given in our faith and move forward into building a better future. So thank you all so much for joining for this series. And thank you all so much for your amazing work. We know this is just one piece of the incredible work that you are doing. And we are just deeply, deeply grateful to be in community with each and every one of you. We pray that you have a wonderful evening, a wonderful week, and a truly blessed season of creation. And please let us know how it goes. So thank you again so much, and many blessings to each and every one of you.